Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a period that was literally the heartbeat for all developments in East Asia, China's Song Dynasty, running from 960 to 1279. If you want to understand the ancient roots of our modern global trade, bureaucracy, and technology, well, this is the exact engine we need to look at. To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of this era, consider this. 40%. Yeah, 40%. Thanks to massive food surpluses and sweeping innovations, China's population boomed to make up nearly half of the entire human race at the time. Can you imagine? It was a demographic and economic explosion that permanently reshaped history. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the Song Dynasty Golden Age, how they governed through meritocracy, their massive engine of innovation, the social hierarchy and culture, and finally, the ripples they sent across all of East Asia. Let's get right to it. Part 1. The Song Dynasty Golden Age, spanning from 960 to 1279. Now, it's fascinating to realize that the Song didn't just invent their government out of thin air. They actually built upon a massive imperial bureaucracy, a centralized system of appointed officials carrying out state policies that was established way back in 221 BCE by the Qin dynasty. The Song kept that foundational chain intact, but they scaled it up immensely for the 11th century to create a remarkably stable state. So, what were the core pillars of this society? Well, the Song dynasty was deeply anchored in Neo-Confucian teachings. Think of it as a strict moral compass that prioritized social harmony and duty above almost everything else. And this wasn't just some elite philosophy, right? It was the fundamental glue holding the government together, setting the stage for immense wealth, political stability, and absolutely massive intellectual and artistic breakthroughs. Moving on to part 2, governing through meritocracy. The political blueprint of the era. The key here is the concept of a meritocracy. The Song fundamentally shifted how power worked. Instead of just relying on, who your parents were or noble birth, officials actually had to earn their government positions. How? By passing grueling civil service exams based on Confucian texts. It was basically the ultimate high-stakes standardized test of the ancient world. And the government put real resources behind this idea. Emperor Song Taizu deliberately expanded educational opportunities so that even poorer, lower-class men had a shot at taking these exams. Now, while the poor were definitely still underrepresented overall, this policy created a legitimate pathway for unprecedented upward mobility. It brought fresh talent in and resulted in a highly capable government workforce. Section 3. An engine of innovation. Let's look at the fuel and the output. It all started with a massive chain reaction in agriculture. The Song implemented some incredible farming hacks. For starters, they imported drought-resistant, fast-ripening champa rice from Vietnam, essentially the fast food of the 11th century. When you combine that with expansive irrigation, the use of manure, and heavy plows, you get absolutely massive food surpluses. And that surplus directly triggered that wild 40% global population boom we marveled at earlier. But they certainly weren't just farming. Innovators were busy creating the world's very first guns and spreading gunpowder tech across Eurasia. They were advancing steel production for better tools and infrastructure, and they even drove what historians call proto-industrialization. Basically, they set up massive, coordinated workshops producing highly sought-after goods, like porcelain and silk, long before the modern factory ever existed. Plus, they had a vibrant internal trade network happening via the Grand Canal. All of these high-value goods, combined with their naval advancements and that massive Grand Canal network, totally transformed the nation. As our source material points out, China became the world's most commercialized society. I mean, think about that for a second. The early blueprint for our modern consumer economy was literally being drafted right here. Which brings us to Section 4, social hierarchy and culture. Who were the people actually driving this engine? Well, there's an incredible historical irony here. You've got the highly educated scholar gentry class sitting comfortably at the very top, acting as the most influential and respected group in society. But the merchants? The very people actually driving all that immense commercial wealth? Strict Confucian values place them at the absolute bottom of the social ladder. It's wild to think about. Imagine today's tech billionaires being considered the lowest class in society. But that was the reality. Regardless of your class, though, this economic boom meant people were flocking to the cities in droves. Rapid urbanization completely transformed places like Chang'an, Hangzhou, and Guangzhou into these sprawling, bustling hubs of urban life, commerce, and culture. Now, as we report on the source material, we also see a society of stark contrasts during this time. On one hand, you had strict patriarchal norms dictated by Confucian traditions, which expected women to defer to men. In aristocratic families, this was physically symbolized through the painful practice of foot binding as a mark of subservience. But on the other hand, the exact same society was experiencing massive cultural leaps. Take the invention of woodblock printing, for example. It completely burst open the doors to literature and fueled this incredibly flourishing, accessible literary culture among Confucian scholars. Deep religious evolution was also happening. Buddhism, which had spread widely during the earlier Tang dynasty, really began to merge with local Taoist principles. This blending, or syncretism if we're being technical, created Chan Buddhism. You likely know it today as Zen Buddhism, which placed a heavy new emphasis on direct experience and quiet meditation.
Finally, Section 5, Ripples Across East Asia. Let's examine the blast radius of this Chinese influence.
When you have an economic and cultural engine this powerful, the regional impact is going to be massive. But the neighboring regions reacted in very different ways. Japan, for instance, absorbed a lot of the Chinese culture, but they kept their distinct feudal system with powerful daimyo controlling the land, rather than adopting China's centralized bureaucracy. Korea, on the other hand, heavily emulated Chinese politics and culture, but their powerful aristocracy actually blocked the full adoption of those meritocracy reforms we just talked about. And then there's Vietnam. Vietnam took a highly adversarial stance. They fought hard to protect their own distinct culture and fiercely resisted practices like foot binding. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. Knowing that the Song dynasty successfully pioneered everything from massive global trade networks and merit-based government to gunpowder and rapid urbanization, how much of our modern interconnected world was actually born in 11th century China? It is absolutely a fascinating question to ponder. Thanks so much for joining me.